Level 1. 0. Not debt. 0. There's a difference, and nobody explains it to you until you've lived on both sides of the line. 0 is a clean number. 0 looks like nothing happened. No minus sign, no collection notice, no letter with a window in the envelope. You have nothing at all, which is not the same as owing nothing, but the screen doesn't distinguish. The screen says $0.00, and it's telling the truth in a way that feels like a lie. Your paycheck lands on Friday. By Sunday night it's gone. Not spent recklessly. Spent structurally. Rent took 40%. The car took 12%. Food took whatever was left. After the phone and the insurance and the thing you forgot was scheduled to charge. You do the math on a Tuesday and discover you didn't make a single decision. Every dollar had somewhere to be before it arrived. This is the part that breaks people. Not the poverty. The passivity. You are working 40 hours a week to move money from an employer to a landlord. You are a routing number with a pulse. The work is real. The tiredness is real. And at the end of it, the account says exactly what it said at the beginning. 0. Like the week never happened. You try to save $50. You put it in a separate account. It feels good for 9 days. On day 10, the check engine light comes on and stays on. The 50 comes back out. The separate account goes back to 0. The system you built lasted 9 days. You don't try again for 4 months. Somebody tells you about compound interest. They show you a chart. The chart says if you invest $500 a month starting now, you'll have $1.2 million at 65. You look at the chart, and the chart is talking to someone else. Someone with $500 a month. You have $500 a month the way you have a summer house. Theoretically, in a version of your life that isn't this one. The advice always assumes the surplus. That's the thing nobody tells you. Every book, every video, every plan begins after the hardest part is already solved. The hard part isn't allocating the extra. The hard part is generating an extra that exists. You open the app that tracks your spending. It makes a pie chart. The pie chart tells you that you spent $34 on coffee this month, and that if you stopped, you'd be a millionaire. You close the app. You know something the app doesn't. The $34 isn't the problem. The $34 is the only thing that made a Wednesday survivable. The app is optimizing a life it has never had to live. Here is what 0 actually costs you. Not the money. The horizon. At 0, you cannot think past 11 days. Your entire planning capacity is consumed by the next bill. You are not lazy. You are not undisciplined. You are running a real-time logistics operation with no reserves, and every ounce of processing power goes into keeping the operation from failing today. Long-term thinking is not a personality trait. It's a luxury good. It costs money and you can't afford it. Somebody with money tells you to think bigger. You want to explain that thinking bigger requires a floor to stand on and you're standing on the ground. But you don't say it. You nod. You've learned that the explanation makes you sound like you're making excuses, and you're not making excuses. You're describing physics. You are not broke because you're bad with money. You're bad with money because you're broke. Nobody at 0 has ever been told that, and it's the only true sentence in the entire conversation. The tire blows in November. $180. You don't have it. You put it on a card you promised yourself you'd never use. The card charges 26%. The tire is now $180 that grows. You've just borrowed from a future version of yourself who is going to be angrier and poorer than you are. You get paid Friday. It's gone by Sunday. You have 0. Level 2. $1,000. It took you 5 months. Not 5 months of saving. 5 months of not losing. There's a difference, and you learn it the hard way. You didn't get here by putting money in. You got here by surviving 5 consecutive months without a single emergency. The savings weren't a strategy. They were the absence of a disaster. The number sits there, and you check it more than you should. 3 times a day, sometimes 4. Not because it changes. Because it's the first thing in your financial life you've ever been able to look at without flinching. Then something happens that nobody warns you about. The number doesn't make you feel safe. The number makes you feel afraid. At 0, you had nothing to lose. It was terrible, but it was simple. At 1,000, you have something to lose, and losing it would put you back at 0, and going back to 0 after knowing what 1,000 feels like is worse than never having left. You acquired an asset and a fear at the same time. They arrived in the same envelope. You start protecting it. Aggressively. Irrationally. You drive on a bad tire for 6 weeks because replacing it costs $180. and $180 is 18% of everything you have. The math says fix the tire. The fear says the number is the only thing standing between you and the version of your life you just escaped. So you drive on the tire. You listen for sounds. You take the surface streets. This is what nobody explains about the first 1,000. It isn't enough to solve a problem. It's exactly enough to make you terrified of problems. The emergency comes in month 6. It always does. The transmission, or a medical bill, or a month where your hours get cut and you don't find out until the check is short. $840. You watch 1,000 become 160 in a single afternoon. You sit in your car in a parking lot and you don't cry, because crying is for people with the surplus to feel things. You just sit there. 5 months of not losing, undone by one Tuesday. Here's what you do next, and it's the whole game. You start over. Not with enthusiasm. Not with a renewed sense of purpose. You start over the way you'd restart a machine that broke. Mechanically, without ceremony, because the alternative is not having a machine. You put $40 in the next Friday. It's not a comeback. It's just the next input. That's the thing nobody films. The comeback story is a montage. The reality is a person putting $40 into an account for the 9th month in a row with no evidence it will ever matter. The second 1,000 takes 3 months instead of 5. Not because you earn more. Because you already know the exact shape of the failure. You've priced it in. You tell a friend you're saving. He says that's smart, and then tells you about a stock. He read about it. It's going to run. He put in 2,000, and it's already up 30%. He shows you the app on his phone with the green number on it. You do the math on the drive home. If you'd put your 1,000 in, you'd have $1,300. $300 in 3 weeks. It took you 5 months to make 1,000, and this man made 300 by pressing a button. The feeling isn't envy. It's worse. It's the suspicion that you're playing a rigged game correctly while everyone else found the cheat code. You don't put the money in. 2 months later, he doesn't bring up the stock. You never ask. You know. This is the first thing $1,000 buys you that isn't money. It buys you one instance of not doing the stupid thing. And the not doing was made possible entirely because you knew what 5 months felt like, and he didn't. The 1,000 doesn't protect you from emergencies. The 1,000 costs too much to spend on a bad idea. That's the only thing it does. That's enough. You don't have money at $1,000. You have friction. Level 3. $10,000. Something changed, and it wasn't the number. You crossed 5 figures on a Thursday. You expected it to feel like something. It felt like a Thursday. The digit count changed, and your body registered nothing, and you stood in your kitchen slightly insulted by your own lack of reaction. Then a week later you notice it. You get a text about a work thing. A schedule change, some new indignity from a manager who's been building toward it for months. At 0, that text would have moved through your body like a current. Your jaw, your shoulders, the calculation running underneath everything about whether this is the week it all comes apart. You read the text. Nothing happens. Not because you stopped caring. Because $10,000 is 4 months of your life. 4 months where the rent gets paid whether or not that man is happy with you. The text arrives into a body that has 4 months of runway, and the body simply doesn't produce the chemical anymore. You didn't buy freedom. You bought the ability to hear bad news without your hands going cold. That's what the money is. Nobody says it because it doesn't fit on a chart. $10,000 is not an amount. It's a distance between you and other people's decisions. You start saying no. Small ones at first. A shift you don't want. A favor you'd have done at 0 because you couldn't afford to be the kind of person who says no. Now you say it, and the sentence comes out flat and unremarkable, and the world does not end. You go home and think about it for an hour. The size of the thing you just did is invisible to everyone but you. Your car needs work. $600. You pay it. From savings, in cash, in a single transaction that takes 40 seconds. Then you notice what didn't happen. No card. No 26%. No future version of yourself getting handed a bill. The problem cost $600 and stayed $600. It didn't grow. It didn't follow you into next year. That's the tax nobody itemizes. At 0, every problem is a problem plus interest. At 10,000, a problem is just a problem. You've been paying a surcharge on being alive for your entire adult life, and it just stopped, and there was no announcement. You put $600 back over the next 2 months. It's annoying. It's not a catastrophe. That distinction is the whole level. You get invited to something. A trip, a wedding, a thing that costs $900 you weren't planning to spend. At 0, you'd have invented a reason, a conflict, a schedule, something that let you decline without saying the true sentence, which is I can't afford it. You'd have lied because the lie was cheaper than the truth. You go. It costs $900. You go home, and the number is lower, and you're fine. You learn something about your old self on that trip. He wasn't antisocial. He was rationing. Every no he ever gave was a budget decision wearing a personality. Then the thing happens that nobody prepares you for. You get bored. The system works. Money in, money stays, number climbs. It climbs at $400 a month, which means 100,000 is 19 years away, and you did that math at a red light, and you have not stopped doing it since. 19 years. You start looking for the shortcut, not out of greed, out of arithmetic. You look at the trajectory, and you understand for the first time that discipline alone will not get you there in a time frame that includes your youth. This is where most people die, not at 0. Here, $10,000 is where the plan is finally working, and the working is finally unbearable. You don't have wealth at $10,000. You have proof the machine runs, and a stopwatch that says it runs too slow. Level 4. $25,000. You did the thing you weren't supposed to do. You changed the input, not the spending. Everyone tells you to change the spending. You'd already changed the spending, you changed it for 3 years, and the spending was a line you'd sanded down to bone. There was nothing left in it. You changed the income, a second job, or a skill you sold on the side. Or you walked into a room and asked for a number that made your voice do something strange in the middle of the sentence. And the number happened, not because you deserved it, because you asked, and asking was free, and you'd never once asked before because at 0 you couldn't afford to be told no. Here's the part they leave out. The raise didn't come from confidence. The confidence came from the 10,000. You could ask because you could survive the answer. The money bought the ask. The ask bought the money. Your income goes up $1,100 a month. You watch what happens next with genuine curiosity because you've read about this. Lifestyle inflation, the thing that eats people. You wait for the urge to buy a better car. It doesn't come. That surprises you until you understand it. You didn't resist the temptation. The temptation never arrived. 3 years of not spending rewired what spending feels like. It stopped being pleasure and became noise. You aren't disciplined. You're bored of it. Those look identical from the outside, and they are nothing alike. You put the whole 1,100 into the account. The trajectory changes. 19 years becomes 6. That's the level, not the money, the slope. You open a brokerage account. You do it on a Sunday, and you're nervous in a way that embarrasses you. You put in $500. An index fund, the boring one, the one every book says. You watch it for a week. It goes up $9. It goes down 14. It goes up 2. The volatility does something to your nervous system that the number doesn't justify. $14. You lost $14 and you felt it in your chest, and you know exactly why. Not because $14 matters. Because you remember when it did. That's the ghost. The part of you that was at 0 doesn't leave when the number changes. He stays. He reads the same screen you do, and he sees something different on it. You keep the money in. That's the only skill. The whole discipline of investing is the ability to not press a button, and the button feels different depending on how you grew up. Someone at work asks what you do with your money. You say index funds. They laugh. Not cruelly. They laugh the way you laugh at someone taking the stairs. They're in options. Their friend is in crypto. Everyone is up. Everyone is always up in the story, because the story is only told during the up. You feel like a coward. That feeling is your best asset, and it does not feel like an asset. It feels like being the slowest person in a race that everyone else is winning by cheating. You are not invisible to the market at 25,000. You're simply too small to be worth lying to. Nobody sells you a private deal at 25,000. Nobody flies to your office. The absence of attention is the last free protection you'll ever receive. You don't have leverage at $25,000. You have velocity. Level 5. $50,000. Halfway. And halfway is a lie the number tells you. You expect this to feel like the summit of something. 50,000 is not a small amount of money. It's more than most people have ever seen in one place. It's more than the person you were at 0 could hold in his head as a real quantity. It feels like nothing at all. You figure out why on a Sunday, running the numbers for no reason other than that you now do this for fun, which is its own kind of diagnosis. 50,000 earning 8% produces 4,000 a year. 4,000 a year is $333 a month. $333 a month is a car payment. 12 years of your life have produced a car payment. You sit with that. It is the single most demoralizing calculation in the entire journey, and it arrives precisely at the moment you're supposed to be celebrating. But something else is happening underneath, and you don't see it yet. Your money made $4,000 this year. You didn't do anything. You didn't work a shift. You didn't ask for a raise. $4,000 appeared because $50,000 existed. At zero, $4,000 was 2 months of labor. 2 months of your life, your body, your Tuesdays. The account produced it while you slept. You are, for the first time, in a room with someone who works for you. It's you. The earlier you. Every hour that person put in is now standing in a factory somewhere producing $4,000 a year forever. And he doesn't stop, and he doesn't get tired, and he never asks for a raise. You start seeing money differently, and it happens all at once. A $400 jacket isn't $400. It's $32 a year, forever, that you're choosing not to have. You don't do this math to punish yourself. You do it because you can't stop. The lens installed itself, and there's no uninstall. You notice you've become a slightly strange person. You have $50,000, and you drive a car with 140,000 miles on it. Someone at work assumes you're struggling. You let them assume it. Correcting them would require explaining, and explaining would require them to understand the $4,000, and they won't, because you didn't either until 9 months ago. This is the first level where your net worth and your appearance decouple. Everyone below you is displaying money they don't have. You have money you don't display. Both are strategies. Only one of them compounds. The market drops 19% in March. 50,000 becomes 40,500. In 11 days, you lose $9,500, which is more than the entire first 2 years of saving. You feel it in your body. Not your mind, your body. The ghost of the man at zero wakes up, and he is screaming, because he knows what $9,500 is. It's 24 weeks of overtime. It's a year of not going out. You don't sell. Not because you're brave. Because you've done this before, at a smaller scale, with $14, and you know exactly what the feeling is and exactly what the feeling is worth. You've been building tolerance to this specific chemical for 3 years without knowing that's what you were doing. It comes back in 7 months. Everyone who sold locked in the loss. You did nothing, and the nothing was the entire skill. You don't have wealth at $50,000. You have a machine, and one confirmed instance of not breaking it. Level 6. $75,000. The number starts moving without you. You notice it in a statement. The account went up 2,100 this month. You put in 1,100. The other 1,000 came from somewhere else. It came from the money. You read that line 3 times. You have crossed a threshold with no ceremony attached to it. For the first time in your life, the money is contributing more in some months than you are. You are no longer the primary engine of your own net worth. You've been demoted by your own savings account. It's the best news you've ever received, and there's nobody to tell. You try once. You explain it to someone at dinner. They say that's great, and mean it, and change the subject. The significance is untransmittable. It only lands if you were there for the $9, the $14, the 9 days, the parking lot. Here's what $75,000 does to you that no amount below it did. You become dangerous to your employer. Not loud, not difficult. $75,000 is roughly a year of your expenses, and everyone in that building can feel the difference between a person who needs the job and a person who has selected it. They can't name it. They adjust to it anyway. You get asked to do something unreasonable. You say that timeline doesn't work. You don't apologize afterward. You don't fill the silence. The silence sits there, and someone else fills it, and the timeline moves. At zero, you'd have said yes and hated yourself in the parking lot. The parking lot is where all of this used to happen. You realize the raise you got at $25,000 wasn't about performance. You'd been performing the whole time. The raise happened because you could afford to be told no. Every negotiation you ever lost, you lost before you walked in, and you lost it at the account balance, not at the table. Then the offer comes. Someone approaches you about a business. It needs $30,000. The numbers are good. The person is credible. It's a real opportunity, not a scam, and that's what makes it hard, because a scam you can refuse cleanly. $30,000 is 40% of everything you've built in 12 years. You think about it for 2 weeks. You lose sleep. And the reason you lose sleep isn't the risk. It's that you finally understand the thing that separates you from people with real money. And it's not intelligence. And it's not work ethic. It's that 30,000 is 40% of your life, and it's a rounding error in theirs. They can take 10 of these bets. You can take one. And a person who can take 10 bets isn't braver than you. They're just playing a different game with the same rules printed on the box. You say no. It's the right call, and it costs you something anyway. And what it costs is the illusion that the gap between you and them is about character. You don't have options at $75,000. You have one option and the wisdom to know it's one. Level 7, $90,000. The last 10,000 is the longest 10,000. Not mathematically. Mathematically, it's the fastest 10,000 you've ever done. The account is throwing off returns. Your income is higher than it's ever been. The machine is running better than it has at any point in 12 years. It takes 8 months, and every one of them is a year. You know why? You can see the finish line. And a finish line is the worst thing that can happen to a person who has spent 12 years not looking at one. The whole method was that you didn't look. You put $40 in on a Friday because that's what Friday was for. There was no destination. There was just the input, again, forever, and the not looking was the reason the not stopping was possible. Now you look every day. 91,200, 91,900, 91,400, because the market moved. You've never wanted anything this badly, and it's just a number that you yourself decided was important. You start doing the thing you swore you'd never do. You start bargaining with the timeline. You think about the friend with the stock. 12 years ago, $300 in 3 weeks. You think about it for the first time in almost a decade and you understand something ugly about yourself. You are $90,000 in and you are still, in some room you don't visit often, looking for the cheat code. You don't take the shortcut. But you learn that the man at zero never left. He just went quiet during the part where you were winning. You get sick in month 5. Not seriously. Seriously enough. 3 weeks, a specialist. A bill for $4,100. You pay it. Then you sit down, because something just happened that you need to look at directly. 12 years ago, a $180 tire started a chain reaction that took 8 months to escape. It grew at 26%. It followed you into the next year. It changed what you ate. $4,100 just happened, and it was Tuesday. That's the entire distance. Not the 90,000. The fact that a $4,000 event and a $180 event now occupy the same category, and the category is called handled. You don't feel rich. This is the part that never gets said. At $90,000, you feel exactly as unremarkable as you did at $10,000, because feelings do not scale with numbers. They scale with the gap between what you have and what you're afraid of. The number moved. The fear moved with it. You will never feel wealthy. Nobody does. The man with 5 million is running the same calculation with different digits, and he sleeps about as well as you do. That's not a tragedy. It's just the design. And knowing it now, at 90,000, is worth more than the 10,000 you're about to make, because it's the only thing that will keep the next decade from eating you. You don't have security at $90,000. You have the correct relationship with never having enough. Level 8, $100,000. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon while you're doing something else. You check the app for no reason. $100,240. You look at it. You wait. Nothing. No feeling arrives. You've been waiting 12 years for a feeling, and the feeling does not come, and you stand there holding a phone in a hallway, and the whole thing is over, and it's Tuesday. This is the last lie the number tells, and it's the biggest one. The number was never going to feel like anything. It was never the point. It was the scoreboard, and you'd been told your entire life that the scoreboard was the game. Then, about a week later, in the shower or the car or somewhere equally stupid, the real one hits you. $100,000 at 8% makes $8,000 a year. $8,000 a year is $666 a month. $666 a month, doing nothing, forever, for money that already exists. At zero, that number was your rent. Your entire housing situation, the thing that dictated every decision you made for years. The thing that consumed 40% of your labor. Your money now covers what your life used to cost. Not your current life. Your old one. The account has caught up to the man in the parking lot and made him obsolete. Here's the mathematics nobody tells you at zero, And it's the only reason any of this was worth doing. The first 100,000 took 12 years. The second will take 7. The third will take 4. Not because you'll be better, because $8,000 a year of unearned money is now standing next to you doing the work, and next year it'll be 9,000. And the year after that it will hire someone else. You spent 12 years building an employee. He never sleeps, and he never asks for anything, and he starts over every January. That's what the first 100,000 is. It isn't wealth. It's the last money you'll ever have to make entirely alone. And that is why it's the hardest money you'll ever make. Not because the amount is large, because it's the only stretch of the entire road where you're pushing the car with nothing in the tank, no engine, no help, no compounding, no momentum, just you in a decade and $40 on a Friday. Everyone after you gets to see this. Nobody before you did. You look back at the man at 0, and here's the thing you finally understand. He wasn't undisciplined. He wasn't bad with money. He was standing at the bottom of a hill with no leverage, no reserves, no floor, no time, being told by people at the top that the climb is mostly attitude. It isn't attitude. It's the first 100,000. And the first 100,000 is the only part of this that has to be done by hand. Somewhere right now, someone is looking at a screen that says $0.00. They just paid $180 for a tire on a card charging 26%. They're doing the math, and the math says 19 years, and they're deciding whether to bother. They don't know yet that the 12 years aren't the price of the money. The 12 years are the price of never having to do it that way again. You are the same person at every balance. The number just decides how much of the world gets to have an opinion about you.